all quilted and everything.
Scan those in.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Time for us to start. Let's look at our in thoughts and prayers. Naomi Ruth's great-grandson, Duncan Howard Stevenson, was born October 13 and is in NICU. His parents are Zach and Jenny Stevenson. Big sister is Nancy. Cindy Stevenson is the grandma. Cindy is Naomi Ruth's daughter. So we want to continue to remember them in our prayers. Robert Fry, Chris Fry's brother, requests prayer. He had 2 surgeries for an infection in his knee. Marvin and Janie Balch request prayers for their son who is recovering after a stroke. Ruby Jordan's son, Jim Jordan, is being treated for a staph infection. Jim is slowly getting back to time. Yesterday, they discovered that there's some kind of a thing with the blood. As he was tested each day when he first started this, he was like at 20 and he had to get down to 0. So he went to 0 and he's been doing real good. They put him in therapy, and now the blood is showing that it's not on 0. So we don't know if it's trying to come back. He's not had an IV off of himself since he started. So we don't know what's going on. We will see a doctor today and of unusual diseases. And so we may learn more. But if you would, remember him in your prayers. Sharon Nolan's surgery has been rescheduled for November 1st. Angela Smith's aunt is doing better. Nancy Giles requests prayers for Lily, who is her great-granddaughter. Samuel Russell requests prayers for strength to be godly, to be a godly influence on his family. Clayton Dodd's cousin, Michael, is at home in hospice care. This says Pam Ritchie, but it should be Pam Griffin, this next person. Pam Griffin is requesting prayers for her neighbor, Randy, who is dealing with a blood flow issue in his leg. Jackie Brotherton, grandson Jeffrey, who will have to see an oncologist. He also had a seizure. Recovering from surgery procedure, Desi Lennon, Jackie Brotherton, Eva Smith, and Monica Monez. Undergoing chemotherapy and radiation is Kelly Pasednik's friend, Ms. Atkinson, Clayton Dodd's sister-in-law, Carol Bettis. Continuing to remember, there's a list of different people that are on this for different reasons. And so we want to remember them also. Happy birthday, it says Ralph Schilling is turning 99 on October 30th. It would be wonderful for him to receive happy birthday cards. Please mail the cards to it. It has the mailing address there. And it says, thank you, Susan Schilling Watson. We still, for some reason, have ladies' class luncheon on this paper. If you would please mark it out real hard so you don't forget. We have no food with us today. The Fall Festival is still going on at John and Brianne's home, Saturday, October 22nd, starting at 5 p.m. Is there anyone else that has, okay, Sarah?
Let me just come up there
Okay.
quickly because I need to read this. Also, you may want to remember I don't think that was put on the thing, but the Ladies' Day at Wiley. Jean, are you planning to go?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope so. What's it?
It's November 12th.
Yeah.
And it starts at 9:30. Lunch is provided. They always have a good lunch. I've been over there 2 or 3 times. Guest speaker is Becky Blackman. She's written several books and all. And it's about Queen Esther, our sister of courage. One of my very best friends, her husband used to be an elder there. And so if you go, just hug Sylvia McClendon for me, because I can't be there because I'll be in Mount Pleasant that Saturday. And that's way too far for you guys to go, and you hear enough of me anyway. But I need to read this right quickly. I see it went off again. Okay. This is from Dennis. Some of you were here. Come on, get here where I can see, where I can get you this way. Oh, there we go, finally. All right. Several of you were here Sunday night when Gary reported on Ukraine. And then I think it was Monday that he got this in his, or maybe Sunday night afterward, that he got this from Dennis. And Dennis is the director of the school over there. And he and his wife, honestly, the number of times they've had to move, set up a home, to keep the school going. And then the ministering that they're doing to others, it just amazes me. And she's just a little bitty, she's tall, but she's so thin, wind would blow her away. But she's just a sweetheart. But I wanted you to know about this. The war continues in our country, and we feel it every day. Ukraine is being hit by Russian missiles, and it doesn't matter to what part of the country you relocated. The missiles land everywhere. Last week, the city where I live got attacked. And his English is a wee bit different from ours, okay, here. The kamikaze drones manufactured in Iran were targeting the military base, and all the barracks were blown up. My children and my wife were terrified. He has 2 little girls. And we rushed to the basement of the multi-apartment building to wait the night strikes out. Undoubtedly, it influences the people's character, children being especially vulnerable. Many people are very unstable emotionally, with fewer smiles and less compassion. It is understandable because every second can be your last one. We ask you keep praying for peace in Ukraine. The war took lives of so many civilians, and military facilities are not even known to the general population. He has a picture here of the church in Bella Circa. That's where the school had been located for a while. And I was teasing Gary. He spelled Bella Circa 3 different ways on his PowerPoint presentation, and it actually starts with a T anyway. Let's see, he says, we keep ministering to the refugees who relocated to our city. We purchase groceries and distribute them weekly. We invite people to the church building, then have come evangelical classes, answer their questions, and after that give them groceries, clothes, and Christian tracts and literature. Unfortunately, some people took food and never came back, but we also have a few people who lived in the church building in the beginning of the war who still come to services. And he says in the Bible Institute in Chevsky, wherever that, the last place that the news said, the students are having the time of evangelical involvement right now. But earlier in the month, they had the Minor Prophets Part 2 taught by Vitali. and leadership course by Dimitro, and I can't pronounce their last names, but I know both those guys. The evangelical practice of our students takes place in a children's boarding school in some other place region. The children who reside there are generally from the city of Nipro. The city is under constant military pressure, and the classes will resume at the end of October. And then he goes on to thank everyone for their continued prayers and support. But I just felt like I needed to read the whole thing because Dennis was writing from his heart and from his experience over there. And you know, sometimes we do mission work like that, and we might wonder, are they really committed like we are here, you know? And Dennis and his wife and several others that we met over there. In fact, on my birthday, you know how you'll get wishes from people online on Facebook. And we had wondered about Albert and Irene. We knew Irene and their daughter had gone to, I think, to Germany. And Terry had told us that Albert was being drafted or called up, you know, for service, but he's Armenian. He lives in Ukraine, but he's Armenian. And we hadn't heard from Albert. And on my birthday, I got a birthday wish from Albert, and I just wrote back, I said, this is the best birthday wish I've gotten, just to know that you're alive and that you're okay. And then later we got a picture of the group, well, it was eating in the library that Gary showed it, and Albert was in that group, and so we were, you know, pleased about that. But there are some honestly really dedicated people over there that are serving the Lord now in very difficult circumstances. And those 4 grandmothers that Gary mentioned, when we were over there and we were going to meet the church had been meeting in their apartment all those years. And after meeting them, I just had to step out for a little while because I was, you know, so emotional, because that reminded me of the godly women here who many times have kept little congregations going, or who have been the backbone of churches so much of the time. And all of you who are doing what you can to remain faithful and to encourage others. And that just reminded me of them. So I got kind of emotional when Gary showed that picture again, just remembering those people and what they were doing. And I know that many of us would do the same. I think we would do the same. But I'm thankful that we don't have to. But, anyway, I just wanted y'all to know.
That's great, Sarah. I'm glad you brought that up. I've tried to keep up with them on the television as much as I can, but I know that it's a tragic thing. Okay, if there's no one else that wants to say anything, Julie, is he back? I was glad to see her. She's going to be leading our song, and Pam Ritchie's going to be saying our prayer. So we'll go ahead, Julie, with you now. Okay. Oh, did you raise your hand, Julie?
Well, Clayton had something to say.
Okay.
I just wanted to let you know that Michael had passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for telling us.
Yes, Ms. Ruby, I'm so sorry I had to cancel on you last week.
Okay.
But
You're okay.
when migraines hit, they can really mess you up.
What number? I wasn't listening.
680, no, not one. So I'm pretty sure you know it. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. None else could heal all our soul's diseases. No, not one. No, not one.
Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. No friend like him is so high and lowly. No, not one. No, not one. And yet no friend is so meek and lowly. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. There's not an hour that he is not near us. No, not one. No, not one. No, not so dark, but his love can cheer us. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the rain Sunday. Thank you for this beautiful fall day. Thank you for Sarah and her studying your word. We appreciate her heading up our ladies' Bible class. Watch over our sick and hurting, especially Craig and Jim. The war in Ukraine is horrible. Please keep our friends safe and out of harm's way. Thank you for our safety. We are very fortunate. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay. We are on lesson 5:5, so we're over still in because we're doing the miracles in the order that they appear and not in the order that he has them organized here, because I like studying them that way. You're looking at what was going on in the life of Jesus at the time of the miracles. I think it helps us make a little more sense. So anytime you're wondering where we might be, if you miss class like somebody I know is going to, you can always kind of go over here to this chart 1. Mamie's going to be gone for the next 2 and through the month of November. So we'll miss you.
Word. We can't stand it without you.
And of
my
course,
granddaughter reminded me that it's been a long time since I've been down to visit, and it has.
yeah. And when grandchildren say jump, we jump.
Yes.
Right. Even though I don't have one to say jump, I still know the feeling there. And but anyway, this chart number 1 will kind of help you know where we are and what we're doing, and so on. So today we're looking at Simon's mother-in-law and a leper cleanse, and we might get into the paralytic, but I doubt it because I happened to think of something while I was on the way over here. But last time we talked about, by the way, if my lesson today is not very good. I can't think very well because I forgot to put on earrings this morning. I was, yeah, I know. It's, I got the, okay, I gave her a couple of little,
You can pinch these on there.
yeah, and see, I don't do, but I had given her a couple of little hair things. Maybe this will work. Oh, they kind of hurt more. I don't think I can
Yeah.
deal with those. But anyway,
It was the thought
thank
that
you.
counted.
Yeah, that's the thought that counts. That's what a friend's son said when she was bringing me a container of candy for Christmas. He said, "Can't we eat it and tell her we thought about her all the way?" But anyway, yeah, I think I can think. But last time we talked about the man with the unclean spirit, and I told you guys that I was going to start reading a book by Richard Beck, who's head of the psychology department out at ACU. And it was called Reviving Old Scratch. And some of you said you'd never heard that term used. And I had, but I couldn't remember who or why, but a long time ago. And Gary had told me that at first that he hadn't heard it, but then he told me later, he said, "Oh yeah, I've heard that a bunch of times." I think he forgets what he says. But anyway, I'm almost finished with that book. It's not very thick, and I've been, and I just thought it was interesting to know what some of our brethren are saying. And I suppose we can, he grew up in the church. He said in a very conservative church. And he said he always struggled with believing in the devil. And that he said Christians don't talk about the devil all that much. Now, it may be that the people he associated with didn't. And when he uses the term Christian, he's using it as broad just about as you can use it, too. So we have to understand that. And anytime you paint with a broad brush, you're going to miss a lot of stuff, because I was thinking, I wasn't taught that. I never thought that. And probably you would, too. But at least he's going by his experience and his thinking on how we don't talk about the devil. And then he also says that demon possession was more mental illness. They just didn't know about mental illness back then. And that is so frustrating because it hits right at the heart of the scripture. Because if all scripture is given by inspiration of God, don't you think God knew the difference between mental illness and demon possession? And don't you think God in Christ knew the difference? And so that is frustrating. And you see, he teaches their, kids that are coming to ACU, and many good kids from good homes come there because, well, like we sent Peyton there not because we agreed with everything in the Bible department and all, but if he was going to major in theater, we didn't want him to go to UT Arlington because they had just, at his senior year, I had just read in the newspaper where they had put on a show that had full frontal nudity in it, and I thought, I am not about to send my kid there, while he's still kind of figuring out stuff. And at least we knew what was going on at ACU, since Gary had gone through there and everything. And we also knew that there were some very good people still there. In fact, his sociology teacher had been an elder in the church, and we knew him really well, and was a very good man and all like that, and a really dedicated Christian. But anyway, that's one thing that Richard says. And the other thing is, that that the ancients were enchanted out here, that they knew, that they believed in magic. And since they believed in magic, it was natural for them to talk about the devil in magical terms. So he's making the Bible into just an ancient any old ancient thing. And I was telling Gary, I said, I feel like I need to know this, and I feel like sometimes we need to know, because you have grandchildren, and maybe even great-grandchildren that may be facing some of this stuff. It's not just out here, confined to ACU. It may be some of their friends that graduated from there a few years ago. I've forgotten how long Richard has been there, but I think it's been there about 15, 20 years, something like that. And, they're being influenced, and he's not the only one. There are a lot of people out here in the church teaching this kind of thing. And it comes down to, as I've said over and over, and I'm going to write this to Peyton sometime, because I'm waiting to, he and I talk, and we email. And I even emailed something to him the other day, and I said, I think I stepped over the line and was trying to give you advice. I don't want to be giving you advice. And he said, yeah, you didn't step over the line. Say whatever you're thinking. That's okay. And so I was happy about that, because, but all of it comes down to, what think you of the Christ? Whose son is he? What think you of the Christ? Whose son is he? That's what it all comes down to. And at any rate, one thing he was talking about was a friend that Richard was talking about, that he had friends who were missionaries in Europe. And Europe is so secular. And he was saying that before they can present the good news, they have to present the bad news that you're a sinner. And he said that doesn't go over very well in a secular world. And yet there is some bad news in the Bible, isn't there? But it's mainly focused on the good news. And I was thinking, and he was talking about how America is becoming more secular too. And so I was trying to think, how do we present the gospel to a very secular world without just, slapping them right in the face to where they can't stand up again. How did Jesus present the gospel to a very secular group? How did the apostles present the gospel to, because, we've talked about how the Roman world was, if you look anything at online about the city of Pompeii, I know why Vesuvius erupted. I was about ready to erupt when I just saw some of the ruins, And then when the art was horrible, horrible, horrible. And they used to not let anyone but men see the art in the museum at Naples. It was kept locked away, and only men could go in. And then later, in the 60s, I think, they let women go in, but you had to be over 18. Now, anybody who goes into the museum can see that. And in fact, if you want to see it, you can also see it online. Shouldn't have told you that, y'all. I'll be rushing to see it. But it is horrible. And these were public art places, At least on the TV, we can turn it off. Or we can, it's in the movies or something, we don't have to. But this was in the public bathhouses. It was also out on murals on the streets, your kids. This was not the best thing. But anyway, I'm getting way off the point there. But yes, a secular world does need to be convinced that sin is our problem. That sin is our problem. And then that Christ has taken care of that problem. And through grace and faith, we can be a part of the solution and not the problem. But I was thinking about that, as how Richard is trying to, and many other people do, try to say, well, the devil's really not totally real, but he is kind of real because he's, because bad thoughts and people that do bad things, they're like the devil. Well, in fact, he said the word Satan means adversary, and that's true. And so he says anything or any person that's against Christ is a Satan. That's kind of the way he explains it. Anyway, it just has me thinking about that and how to deal with it with Peyton, in talking about these kinds of things. But, these things are out there, and not just through Richard, but he quotes a lot of important people and he uses a lot of big words. But I know some of those big words, and I've read from a few of those important people. But he looks at the Bible more from a psychologist standpoint, and again, he's standing in judgment on God's Word. And he treats the Bible like the Quran or the Vedas, I think it's called, from the Hindu religion. It's a what am I trying to say? It's our holy book, but it's no more holy than the Quran. That's their holy book. And the good things that are in here are good things that we ought to live by. But we need to remember that so much of it is just magic and ignorance. They were just ignorant of this stuff. The writers were just ignorant. Luke was a physician. I think he knew a few things, right? And again, all of this is inspired by God. But anyway, we'll get off of Old Scratch. I'll just about finish it up. It's probably later today. I've got to give Gary a haircut. Y'all noticed that probably Sunday night. I said, your hair is here. Okay, let's go to Simon's mother-in-law first, because I think there are some good things that we can apply to us there. And let's just look at, he suggests Mark's account, so let's just look at Mark's account of that. Simon's mother-in-law, and that begins in Mark chapter 1, verses 29 through 34. So let me get back. Okay, verses 29 through 34. Now this is after Jesus had cast the demon out of the man, and this is after he had called Peter and Andrew and James and John. So it's after that. And then it says here, now as soon, because it's saying after he healed a man with an unclean spirit, verse 28, and immediately his fame spread throughout all the region around Galilee. And now as soon as they had come out of the synagogue, so that was just right after their being in the synagogue casting out this demon, as soon as they had come out of the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. But Simon's wife's mother lay sick with a fever, and they told him about her at once. So he came in and took her by the hand, lifted her up, and immediately the fever left her, and she served him. And then it goes on to say, in the evening, when the sun was set, they brought to him all who were sick and those who were demon-possessed, and the whole city was gathered together at the door. Then he healed many who were sick and with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he did not allow the demons to speak, because they knew him. Simon's mother-in-law. 2 or 3 or 4 things we can learn there, and this is, I learned this growing up, and you probably did too, that that's, the Roman Catholic popes can't be married, but Peter, they claim, was the first pope, and he was married, so he violated their law, I guess. And they probably figure out some way to get around that. But that's probably one thing that you have heard this dealt with. How quickly did the fever leave her? Just very quickly. And those of you who've had a high fever for quite some time, and apparently she had, when the fever goes away, what about your body? It's still weak, and It takes a while to get, but you see, she immediately was better all over, not just the fever, but everything that the fever had done to her body or whatever had caused it. And all, she was immediately better. And then what did she do?
She got up and helped.
Yeah, she got up and served them. And I just say, I ask myself this a lot of times, especially when I'm feeling kind of, has Jesus done something for me? A whole lot, hasn't it? More than a physical healing. And if Jesus has done something for me, shouldn't I follow her example? Serving, doing whatever I can. You know, it didn't say that she went out here and published it everywhere and that she fed the whole neighborhood or whatever, but she did what she could right there. She served. And I think that's important to know. And then it says here, why did Jesus forbid the demons to speak? And we talked about that a little bit last time because he did forbid that the demon to speak there. He said, be quiet and come out of it. Because the demon had said, I know you who you are, the Holy One of God. So, and you know, again, like we mentioned last time, Jesus spoke to the demons as if they were real, honest to goodness, separate entities from the person. And as if they possessed the person or lived in the body of that person. But why did he forbid them to speak? And that's in Mark 1, verse 34. Because they knew him. And there are two reasons that I've read, and one I lean more toward than the other. But did he want demons testifying of him? Well, yes and no, right? I mean, if the demons are saying, we know who you are, does that, and I think the person who put this material together says that here under the lesson that we did last time, that the unclean spirit acknowledged Jesus as the Christ, but somewhere he says here, maybe I just said it.
Necessary that the testimony coming from God, not
Oh,
from
yeah,
lying
that's
demons.
right. Yeah. I just didn't read the next sentence. Julie said, you know, she keeps me on track. Okay. He says, in order for people to believe that Jesus was the Son of God, it was necessary that the testimony come from God, not from lying demons. Yes, but if lying demons do say, we know who you are. I mean, if your enemy says, I know who you are, the Holy One of God, if your enemy acknowledges who you are. And when Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, did Satan know who Jesus was? Yes. And he tried to hit at that identity, didn't he? If you are the Son of God, if you have power, show off. Was that what Jesus' power was for? To show off? No. And that's another lesson for us if we're going to follow Jesus, as whatever he has given us that we are able to use in the kingdom, is it to show off? Is it for us to say, whoo, look at me, look at what I can do? No, it's, but that's getting a wee bit off the subject. But I think there's another reason that Jesus forbid the demons to speak. And I believe Luke's account tells us a little bit more about that. Well, and no, it's not Luke's account. It may be Matthew's account. Where is Matthew? There we go. Let's go over here. And Matthew 8:14 through 17. Okay. 14 through 17. Okay, just a minute. Oh, yes, and let's look at this too. In Matthew chapter 8. Now 14 talks about Peter's mother-in-law healed, but look at verse 16. When evening had come, they brought him many who were demon-possessed, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. And look at what Matthew says, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, He himself took our infirmities and bore our sicknesses. He cared, and having the ability to do those things, he's fulfilling prophecy here. He's fulfilling prophecy that he took our infirmities and bore our weaknesses. Let's see. There was something. Okay. Oh, I know where it is. It's not on this lesson. It's on the next one. Healing the leper. Healing the leper. That's where it is. Matthew 8, 2 through 4. Matthew has them in a little bit different order. Mark 1, and then Luke's account in Luke chapter 5. So I had all of those marked. Here, so let's just look at Matthew's account first, since that's where I was. Matthew 8, verses 2 through 4, and when he had come down from the mountain, this is after the Sermon on the Mount, great multitudes followed him, and behold, a leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus put out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing. Be cleansed. Immediately his leprosy was cleansed, and Jesus said to him, See that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. And then over in Mark chapter 1, verse 40, the leper came to him, imploring him and kneeling down to him. So Matthew says the leper was worshiping him, and Mark adds a little bit more. He was not only kneeling down and worshiping, but imploring him and saying to him, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And then Jesus, notice what Mark adds, moved with compassion. Is that like Matthew saying he fulfilled the prophecy, taking our bearing our sicknesses and so forth. Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him and said, I am willing, be cleansed. And as soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy left him. So again, it was immediate. Now Jesus strictly warned him and sent him away at once, and said, See that you say nothing to anyone, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing those things which Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Notice that, as a testimony to the priest and to the leaders of the Jews. Oh, that's interesting. However, what did the man do? He went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the matter, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter the city, but was outside in deserted places, and they came to him from every direction. So here is this leper being cleansed, and I want to see if there's some, and Luke adds a little bit more to that. Still, in Luke chapter 5, verses 12 and following, he says that the man with leprosy saw Jesus, and he fell on his face and implored him again, you can make me clean if you're willing. And again, Jesus put out his hand and touched him, saying, I'm willing. And immediately the leprosy rested him. And he said the same thing, just go and for your cleansing as a testimony to them, to the rulers of the Jews. See, a testimony to them. He was supposed to go and offer the offering, and the priest had to inspect before he could be pronounced clean. But Jesus adds that you do this as a testimony to the leaders of the Jews, the priests and others. So Jesus is here trying to get the rulers of the Jews to see who he is. But here in Luke chapter 15 says, but the report went around concerning him all the more, and great multitudes came to hear and to be healed by him of their infirmities. So he himself often withdrew into the wilderness and prayed. So all of these accounts add just a little bit more to it, but I was thinking of a Mark's account and Luke's account in particular. But noting also some things about leprosy. Leprosy was a infectious disease, and it was let's see, I was trying to think how it was spread by by touch, by being around people and so on. And it attacks the skin and the nerves. And I saw a picture online, and you can look that up if you want to, of a person with leprosy. On the face, it disfigures their faces with these horrible sores and ulcers, and they become white and scaly, and it destroys the nerve endings so that people can't feel anything, and then eats away at the tissues on the hands and feet and all. And I have a little bit of a nerve problem in my hands and feet, but just think about how that could be, terrible, terrible. There was no cure at that time for leprosy, and no way to prevent the disease. And the law of Moses required a leper to live apart from other people. The leper was not allowed to enter any walled city, so that's probably why he was, in a smaller area. He had to wear torn clothes and a covering over his upper lip, kind of like the mask that we wear, as he went about, and he had to cry, unclean, unclean, so that others would keep their distance. In short, he says here, the disease of leprosy was a living death. You couldn't be around your family. And some of us during COVID, were concerned about we couldn't be with family, and especially some of the elderly and Jean couldn't be with hers. You were saying, the kids couldn't come over and all, but we did have FaceTime and stuff like that, and we did have Zoom, which kind of held us together a little bit. But just think about how that, if you couldn't see your family or your friends anymore, and if you had family or friends that you really cared about, you didn't want them to see you. For two reasons. You didn't want them to see how horrible you look, but you also didn't want them to get close enough to you to contact the leprosy. And I had to go back to Ben-Hur again, but the leprosy scene in there is so good as to how they deal with that and show what it was really like to have leprosy. And I think that's one of the reasons that leprosy and sin are parallel, because what does sin do? Doesn't it attack your feelings, your nerves, not your physical nerves, but to where you don't think right and you're not doing right? And does it separate you from those of your family or your friends who are trying to live right? And then God doesn't want sin to be spreading out here, does he? That's what makes me so mad about that book and some others. I've got another one I'm reading on, that I'll be reading on holiness, I think is what he's written about. So I want to see what he says on holiness. But the main thing Richard is saying is that everything comes back to loving Jesus and to loving. But you know how he's going to define love. I've already got that figured out. But at any rate, this is a horrible disease. And what does Jesus do? He goes over close to the man and touches him. Ooh, touches him. Yeah.
Wikipedia has it as a bacterial infection. It's no long-term infection
Yeah.
kind of thing. And, you know, as it says, it decreases the nerve endings and stuff. And it can be spread, but it also could be through extensive contact, a cough or
Yeah.
skin touching and things like that. But that 95% of people who contract it actually don't develop the disease. It just depends on your inner system.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that is, and today we have
Oh, yeah.
ways of controlling that. But yeah, Julie was reading from Wikipedia, which is pretty much what this says here, but that not everyone who comes in contact would develop the disease. And there was a king in the Old Testament who developed that disease miraculously. Who was that? Do you remember? His name started with a U.
Uriah? No.
Oh, you're right.
That's the touching thing in my head.
King Uzziah. He went in and did what the priest was supposed to do, and God struck him with leprosy. So that tells you something. We don't take over what God has given for another person to do. Does that have something to do, maybe, the principle with those of us who are women in the church? Should we be looking to take over the role that God has given to men exclusively? May have some parallels. That principle may be the same. But Jesus touched him. Has Jesus touched your life? Is your life different because of Jesus?
Definitely.
I still think about what my life could have been like, because I'm so much like some of the people in my family that, way back, this aunt, that Daddy didn't want me to go to college in Florida because he was afraid I would be influenced by this aunt. Because I like big earrings, and she did too, and she gave me a whole bunch of them. And so I was wearing them. And he was really concerned. And I wanted to color my hair. She was a hairdresser and had her hair about 40 different colors all the time. But she was also super worldly. And had been through a lot of husbands. And I think if I had not known Christ, where would I have been? Where would I have been? It's a scary thought. But Jesus touched that man, and Jesus has touched our lives too. And we are cleansed by his work and by his blood. Now, what did Jesus tell the man to do? After go and show as a testimony, did he tell him to go tell everybody? But what did the man do? He told everybody. And some people say, well, Jesus, in fact, I heard this when a teacher that was working on his degree in psychology, but this is back in the 60s, he said that Jesus was using reverse psychology here.
Yes, I've heard that too.
Yeah, that if he said don't tell, he knew that the man would go out and tell.
I don't know about that.
No. Yeah, Julie's saying she's heard that too, and that I think you see the reason because what happened when so many people learned of that? Could Jesus go into the city again? Because everybody was crowding around him, and one account says that they came to hear his teaching and to be healed. Other accounts just say they came for the healing. Some people did just come for the healing. Like some people just come out here for the bread and don't care anything about the Bibles or the church or anything like that. And yet some do. Some do. But Jesus couldn't enter in. And also, Jesus had to control the timing. And he did control the timing. He was not going to die before time was right for him to die. And that's important here. But also, what does Luke tell us that Jesus did? In Luke 5:16, that because the crowds were coming out to him, he withdrew to the wilderness to pray and prayed. When the work seems to get overwhelming, what do we do? I'll tell you what I do. When things get to be overwhelming, and I almost break down, and then I start praying. Would be better if I prayed first, But that's what I do. I think it all depends on me, and there's all this stuff to do, and I don't have time to get it done. And look at how messy my office is, and I've got all this stuff to keep up with, and I need to get started on that Spanish book, and I can't. And I just need to back off and pray about it. And when I do, things go so much better. So I need to learn from Jesus here. Because when the crowds got overwhelming, when there was so much going on, he was human just like us. His body got tired just like ours does. And he just had 24 hours in his day too. He wasn't superhuman out here. He needed rest. He needed sleep. He needed food. But he showed us what's important. He showed us what's important. But I had a friend several years ago, and then we'll end. It's 10:59. I had a friend several years ago that said, Jesus told this leper that was healed, don't tell. What has he told us to do? Go and tell. Yeah. And we'll see in another instance where Jesus tells a man that he healed to go and tell, and we'll see why he said that there. But he said here that Jesus told the man, don't tell, and the man went and told. He tells us to tell, and what do we do? Yeah. I don't know. I think many of us do tell in various ways, in the ways that we can. But anyway, I promise I will not talk about Old Scratch again. Or at least next week I won't. And next week we will look at the healing of the paralytic. And that was so good. That was so good. So we may not have time to get to the impotent man because it's going to take a while. But at any rate, that's where we will go next time. And I hope we're learning some things about Jesus. I hope we're learning some things about ourselves and about the power of God. Okay, Julie, you've got a song.
348. 348.
Jesus is all the world to me, my Lord, my joy, my all. He is my strength from day to day. Without him I would fall. When I am sad, to him I go. No other one can cheer me so. When I'm sad, he makes me glad. He's my friend. Jesus is all the world to me. I want no better friend. I trust him now. I trust him when life's fleeting day shall
eternal life, eternal joy. He's my friend. I just happened to think of something right quickly, and I'll get up here since Jean Coffey is home from her vacation, but today I think she had a some kind of health test that she had to, and next Tuesday she has a doctor's appointment, but she will be back. And they went through parts of Colorado and Utah, and she gave away 5 sets of my books, and then she said that they went to another congregation and there were some women really interested. So she wrote down a summary of all, if anybody knows the summary of all of them, she does, and gave them her email and her address so that they could get them. So that's good news that Jean is home. And we'll need Julie at least 2 more weeks if you can be here. And we'll let you come even when Jean is here.
Okay, good.
And the other thing is we won't be here for the Fall Festival. We rarely are now. Yeah, I hate that too. But we're going to be down near Pittsburgh and Gary has the preacher is a friend of ours there, and he has a few acres and a gun range where Gary and Tom can go out and get their fix on firing. So, and his wife and I will take care of other things. But y'all have fun at the festival.
So Sarah, Jean isn't gonna be here next Tuesday?
No, she won't be here next
Okay.
Tuesday or the next.
Okay.